Hi, I'm Jeremy Andrews for Educational Psychology. We're going to take a look at a short video clip of a classroom in which our teacher, Emily, is attempting to teach some students who will eventually get a little unruly. Let's go to our video clip now.
Good morning, class. Nice to see you come in for another grade 10 history class. And now that we've wrapped up kind of Unit 2 on the 1920s and flappers and social change from last week, today we're going to start on a new unit and we're going to be discussing the 1930s. So let's start with an interesting game. And when I say a word, you're going to come at me with the first thing that you think of. Okay, you don't need to raise your hands, but I do want you to take turns saying the word, okay? So don't all shout out at once. Okay, so here we go. 1930s.
Say depression.
Stock market crash.
Prohibition.
Dirty 30s.
Excellent. These are some really great ideas. Do you have any more?
Al Capone.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, great. I'm glad that you mentioned these. I'll write them down. Are these things that you're interested in learning a little bit more about?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, so let's try it with another name. What about if I suggest the name R.B. Bennett?
Bennett buggies.
Giving away money.
Conservative.
John A. McDonald.
Ronald McDonald.
Big Mac with fries.
Okay, guys, we're getting a little off base here.
Baseball.
Blue Jays.
You see R.A. Dickey last week?
Yeah, he's throwing a knuckleball like this. Like throwing.
Okay, no.
Catch
Somebody
that.
might get
Look,
hurt here.
Look like that. Like watch
Somebody might
my
get
form.
hurt.
Like,
Okay, class, I think we're getting a little off topic. You've always been good for me in the past. Let's try this again. R.B. Bennett.
R.A. Dickey.
Roberto Alomar.
Edwin Encarnacion.
Joe Carter.
Melky Cabrera.
Okay, since you guys seem to know so much about the 1930s, let's close our books and have a test.
What?
A test?
You can't do that. We don't know anything about the 1930s. I wasn't even born at that time.
I'm not ready for that, man.
What is this? What is
Richard,
this?
if you can't behave, how about you take a trip down to the principal's office?
I would be more than glad to take a trip to the principal's office and tell him that you're making us write a test on stuff we don't even know.
Okay. We won't have a test, but we do have a worksheet to complete today. I was going to let you do it in groups, but now that I see from your behavior today, we're going to have to do it individually.
While it may appear on the surface that very little learning was taking place in Emily's classroom, if we revisit that short video clip, we can clearly see 3 different types of neurological behavioral learning.
Okay, guys, we're getting a little off base.
Take a look at Emily's face here. She looks scared. She's afraid that she's lost control of her class. Classical conditioning focuses on the learning of involuntary emotional or psychological responses, such as fear. When you feel the fear response, you experience increased muscle tension, salivation, or sweating. These are sometimes called respondents because they are automatic responses to stimuli. Thus, for our new teacher Emily, one of her worst fears is coming true. She's losing control of her class to an unruly student. Let's look at another piece of video.
If you can't behave, how about you take a trip down to the principal's office?
I would be more than glad to take a trip to the principal's office and tell him that you're making us write a test on stuff we don't even know.
Look right there. Her eyebrows are raised, her hands grip the side of the desk. Do you see the fear again? Classical conditioning was discovered in the 1920s by Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist trying to determine how long it would take a dog to secrete digestive juices after it had been fed. In this case, Emily knows she's overreacted. Her fear response has been induced, and she must back down from her threat, or else Richard will tell the principal about her actions in class, bringing her judgment into question. The fear was an unconditioned stimulus, because no prior training or conditioning was needed to establish a connection between losing control of her class, looking bad in the eyes of the principal, and fear.
Okay. We won't have a test.
Now let's take a look at the second clear example of behavioral learning.
Okay, so here we go. 1930s.
Say depression.
Stock market crash.
Even though the stock market collapsed in 1929, here the students were able to associate the 1930s with a depression and the stock market crash. This is an example of contiguity. Through a combination of exposure to pop culture and previous learning, both students have heard enough about the 1930s to understand that it had something to do with the Great Depression and bad times as brought on by a stock market crash. This is an example of a conditioned stimulus. All the teacher needed to say was 1930s, and immediately these ideas popped into the boys' minds. Now, we should look at the third, most final, and most important of the types of learning, operant conditioning.
What about if I suggest the name R.B. Bennett?
Bennett buggies.
Giving away money?
Conservative.
John A. McDonald?
Ronald McDonald?
Unlike the previous example where we discussed unintentional and automatic behaviors, sometimes there are deliberate actions taken. These deliberate actions are called operants. The learning process involved in operant behavior is called operant conditioning because we learn to behave in certain ways as we operate on the environment. The person generally thought to be responsible for developing the concept of operant conditioning is B.F. Skinner. Skinner began with the belief that the principles of classical conditioning account for only a small portion of learned behaviors. An antecedent is an event that precedes an action. In this example, the antecedent is the student on the left, Justin, giving an inappropriate response, Ronald McDonald.
Big Mac with fries?
Justin's antecedent has led to Richard's behavior, eliciting an even more inappropriate response.
Okay guys, we're getting a little off base here.
Baseball?
Blue Jays?
Emily tries to get the class back on task, but it may just be too late. The boys are reinforcing each other's behavior. In operant conditioning, a reinforcer is a consequence of a behavior. After the behavior of Richard acting out, both Richard and Justin are so amused by their actions that they continue to reinforce each other's behavior to the detriment of the class.
You see R.A. Dickey last week?
Yeah, he's throwing a knuckleball like this, like going.
Okay, no. Somebody might get hurt here.
Yes, it's just as we've thought. The reinforcer increased the chances that the behavior would happen again, and now the boys are out of control.
That, like, watch
Somebody might
my
get
form.
hurt.
Like,
Okay, class, I think we're getting a little off topic. You've always been good for me in the past. Let's try this again. R.B. Bennett.
R.A. Dickey.
Emily may try to get the lesson back on track, but Richard has learned that by acting up again, he can get out of an unpreferred task. So although at first glance it may appear as though no learning was taking place in this classroom, that couldn't have been further from the truth. In these short examples, we explored classical conditioning through Emily's fear response, contiguity through constant association of terms, and operant conditioning through two separate examples of the boys' behavior. Join us next week when the topic will be matching law and the principles of differential reinforcement. Thank you for this episode of Educational Psychology. I'm Jeremy Andrews. See you next time.